Good afternoon or evening here in Israel. Good noon in Washington, and wherever you are. We are about to open the emergency webinar of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security that is going to deal with the question of Trump, Israel, and the Iranian strike in Iran. And I wonder if anybody of us knows the answer to the question whether it's going to strike or not. But we should be able later on to compare the notes that we are going to say now and what's going to actually happen. My name is Yossi Kuperwasser. I'm the head of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. And with me are some of our experts and some of people who are not yet our experts. So we'll present them all very briefly. The one that is not yet our expert is Danny Ayalon, Ambassador Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to Washington, former Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, and a member of Knesset from the Israel Beitenu party. Professor Eytan Gilboa, from my point of view, is on my right hand. Professor Eytan Gilboa is is a well-known expert on Israeli-US relations and public diplomacy, and is the founder of the Center of Communication at Bar-Ilan University. And as he told me just a couple of minutes ago, he's extremely busy trying to keep up with all the press interviews, media interviews he has on this topic and others. Colonel in the reserve, Dr. Eran Lerman, is my deputy at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. And he used to be my deputy also in the military when I was in the research division of the IDF military intelligence. And in the meanwhile, he used to be the head of the AJC branch in Israel and the deputy for foreign policy at the Israeli National Security Council. And he has just published a paper about this matter that we're going to discuss on our website. So everybody who wants to learn more can have the opportunity to look at that. Bob Silverman is he was a senior US diplomat, including here in Israel, but in many other positions throughout the Middle East. He speaks Arabic and Hebrew and all kinds of languages that I don't speak. And he is also the president of the American Foreign Service Association, which is a big honor. And he is the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Strategic Tribune. I'll do some advertisement for you.
Thank you.
Tribune.
Thanks.
For those who see it. So this is what brings him to the table, mainly an expert about the relations between Israel and the United States, being on both sides of the rope. And Mr. Jonathan Hessen is a senior fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. He is also an expert on Syria, but also an expert on the United States, and he has very close relationships with some people in the administration. And he's also non-resident fellow, senior fellow, sorry, at the Hudson Institute in Washington. So he's bringing in his own expertise on this matter. And I always like to listen to Jonathan on those issues, any other issues, as a matter of fact. So we'll have the opportunity to listen to these 5 experts on this matter. Before I let them speak, let me just say one word. I call upon you to read my article in Israel Hayom. It's in Hebrew. Those who are, I think they published it in English as well. The message of my article about this matter is that if there's one lesson that we have to learn from what's happening now is our anticipation to find out whether Trump is going to go this way or the other, is that, as said in the Pirkei Avot, "Im en ani li mili." We have to be ready to do what we need to do by ourselves when it comes to attacking targets. And we couldn't rely on the Americans to take the Iraq back in 1981. We couldn't rely on them to deal with the Syrian nuclear reactor back in 2007. And we should not rely on them on dealing with the Fordow facility now. We should have come with our plan that would deal with this matter by ourselves. It's not easy, very demanding, but we cannot just rely on the Americans when it comes to attacking sophisticated, problematic targets. That's my take on that, regardless if he's going to attack or not. But I would also say that the relationship between Israel and the United States are not only depending on the question of whether Trump is going to decide to attack Fordow or not. It's much wider than that, and we are very close to the United States, and it shows in many other respects. And there are some differences of opinion on some other issues that were reflected also in Trump's visit to the region, in the relations he's developed with Shara and other issues that we don't always see everything exactly eye to eye, but we have a lot in common. And I think the grand design of the Middle East that we want to see is very similar to the one President Trump and the United States in general wants to see. And bearing that in mind, I'll ask our panelists to speak about 7 minutes if you can. I know it's difficult to ask it from some of you, but I'll try to put it as a bar. 7 minutes per person about Trump, Israel, and the Iran strike. Eran, you go first.
Well, as I tried to also express in the paper that just came out, it's not easy to understand where Trump is going, and this is his deliberate policy to keep all players, friend and foe alike, guessing as to where he may come down ultimately. And he made this very clear. I want to make my decision in conditions of war, in particular, at the very last moment and against the background of the best information I may have about the full range of options. He has certainly created the option of American action, but he has not yet, I believe, made the ultimate decision to use it. And this is because there are political constraints in the American domestic arena that I think Bob and others here will address as well, but he's clearly facing a very noisy, aggressive campaign from elements of his base. He has repudiated their position, but they are still there, and they will be ready to pounce if an American decision turns out to have negative results. And he has to bear that in mind. There are, I think, wailing and wringing of hands in the Gulf countries. There is also, to some extent, the question of where Russia and China may come, or how they may react to an American intervention. But all of these, I think, are the secondary considerations. The two central considerations are, on one hand, and without any doubt, the commitment of the president, which he has made very clear repeatedly, time over time, for years already, in his first term of office, in between and now again, that Iran must not have a nuclear weapon. We've heard together when we met a prominent American scholar not that long ago, that to some extent this perception is colored by his experience of trying to deal with the North Korean dictatorship, with Kim Jong-un, trying to coddle him into giving up his nuclear capability. And the lesson learned is that once a country like North Korea or Iran crosses the threshold into possession of the weapon, it's too late. and action must be taken before this happens. This is why the American negotiating position was ultimately, to some extent retroactively, structured by Trump as an ultimatum. You have 60 days to give me a decent answer that would end your nuclear project, and if you don't, you will suffer the consequences. And as you said, the hardliners that decided to say no are no longer, many of them are no longer with us as a result of Israeli action. So he's very clearly has taken a position of approval of the Israeli action and its consequences. And ultimately, if nothing else drives Iran to accept the deal, then I would not rule out the possibility that he would cross the threshold if he has, let's say, undisputed evidence that the Iranians are adamant on maintaining their position. And that leaves some room in the next few days, maybe, for further, let's say, attempts to find out where Iran's leadership really is, as distinct from its overt defiance. The planned meeting between the European four senior diplomats and Arakchi may be an avenue for this exploration. But ultimately, the position the president has taken, unconditional surrender, is quite clear. At the same time, he's still trying to push a deal, and he's trying to do this using Israel as essentially the enforcer. And from his point of view, clearly a very satisfactory result so far. But I believe at the end of the day, or the end of the next few days, we will come to the point of decision. And if the Iranians do not ultimately accept that the offer made to them in the negotiating paper delivered by Witkoff, which basically leaves them some room to participate in a consortium or something of the sort in the future, but no independent enrichment and certainly no path anywhere in the future towards a military capability. If they do not accept it, I ultimately think that the president has made up his mind that in that case he may go.
That was short and to the point.
I hope so.
Okay, which would allow Ambassador Ayalon to have more time if he needs.
Okay.
What is your take, Danny?
Well, first of all, thank you, Yossi. I think it's very timely to have this webinar by the Jerusalem Institute of Strategy and Security. So I want to commend you and, of course, your deputy, Eran, and all of you here. I would say that, given the situation we are right now at this juncture today, that is Thursday afternoon in Israel, Thursday noon in Washington, is that we are in a binary situation. A binary situation, I mean, either the US is joining Israel or not. And the only way I see that the US will not join is if the Iranians are raising a white flag. We heard the president saying that negotiation is not his interest anymore. He said, I've had enough of those. And he actually demands total surrender, unconditional, which is very much reminiscent of World War II. You know, the way the war ended in Japan and in Europe with Germany. So since I'm sure that there are better analysts on Iran than me here, but for the little I know about the Iranian pride, the Iranian, let's say, rich history as they see it and culture, the Ayatollahs are not going to raise a white flag. So I believe that we are nearing this minute where the United States will join us. Now, many in the media and academia were dwelling in the last few days on Trump himself, on his characteristics, on his mode of operation. What did he say? What he didn't say? Some of them said, that he's confusing everybody, that he's not sure himself. But I want to actually kind of broaden the scope and not concentrate on Trump, but more of American interest from a very objective point of view. One of the main tenets of the United States foreign policy since World War II was the non-proliferation of nuclear or non-conventional weapons. After and they were one of the main signatories of the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and for the United States, and I believe the other major powers, namely the five permanent security members who do possess the nuclear capabilities, for them, it is I would say, a vital interest not to have proliferation. Why? And in the case of Iran, if Iran becomes nuclear, immediately we know this is the end of the NPT, because Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, other countries will join in. And guess what? You have also in the backyard of the United States a country like Venezuela with close ties to Russia and to Iran and to China, and this is very close to home. So I believe just from that perspective, the United States cannot and will not allow Iran to become nuclear. Now, that doesn't deal with the timing. There were some in the administration who said, no, we have more time, maybe up to 3 years. I think this is beside the point. I think the opportunity is now. By the way, Trump, I think he was very much dismissing the comment by his NDI,
Yeah.
the Director of National Intelligence, Miss Gelbart, and he said he doesn't care what she thinks. He is on the side that opposes a strike on Iran now by the United States. But I think most now of the Security Council in Trump's Security Council will be for it. And the timing is right for various reasons. First of all, the risk to United States forces has much been reduced because of the Israeli action. The phenomenal achievement of the Israeli Air Force and all other IDF branches and intelligence, Mossad and everyone that was involved here, makes it much easier for making a decision, because the cost it's not, of course, nothing is risk-free, but the cost today will be much less than any time in the future, probably. But one more or 2 points that I think the US will have to take into consideration is the next stages. Given the fact that the US is going to bomb Fordow and maybe other sites as well, they need to be prepared. All of us actually need to be prepared of what would be the counteraction by Iran. They already threatened either to block the Hormuz Straits, or to strike American targets in the region, or even to strike energy facilities in the region, mainly in the Gulf core. So for that, I believe the United States and us and all the like-minded countries in the region, also with the Gulf countries, which of course will not say it publicly, but also be part of a network of defense against any aggression of Iran that might follow. And again, that should be very, very straight a threat to Iran in all avenues, including through China and through Russia, that if indeed they do something to block international free waterways, navigation freedom, or against any of the Gulf countries, then it's going to be a real devastating exercise by them. I think that the trick now is to make it all on the table. If they do that, what would be the consequences? And this is consequences that they cannot bear. This is what has to be delivered to Iran now. And then, of course, the second thing is to think of an exit strategy. I know it may be too early, but given the fact, or let's say assume that the United States will not need to deploy boots on the ground, an exit strategy should be as easy as just turning the jets and the airplanes back to their bases. And I believe the IDF, Israel, can, let's say, pick up from there. And whatever residue is left over, I think Israel can do it. We have proven that not only we command the airspace of Iran, but very much also the territory of Iran with this amazing stories that we hear about Mossad fabricated drone factories over there and hitting precisely all the higher echelon of the military. So I would say, given all this, I hope, Yossi, I'm still within the 7 minutes, or now I have 8 minutes because of Iran.
If you wait.
I believe that this should bring us, and again, if everything is presented to the Security Council members of Trump, which I believe are gathering as we speak or later this evening here, I think
They want to listen to the seminar. They listen to the webinar, then they decide.
After the webinar, when they meet after the webinar, I think they should point to an inescapable conclusion that the time is now and it can be done. Whether later on it will bring about the demise of the Ayatollahs and maybe a regime change, although this is not a declared mission, I don't think anybody will be sorry about it.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ayalon. We'll move to Eytan, to Professor Eytan Gilboa. Please, Eytan. Eytan, you are mute. You're muted.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, now I do.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So thank you for the invitation to participate in this event. I believe that the Trump administration is struggling with a few questions about the role of the United States in the present situation. Question number one is, what would be the goal of that military intervention on the side of Israel? Number two, whether or not this goal has to be achieved via active military intervention. Number three, if so, when to do it. Danny just provided a very good defense for doing it now. And the last question is how to intervene. So let me discuss all of these questions and see how Trump would handle them. And I think before that, I should say that I believe that Israel needs American active military intervention to complete the job in Iran. The question is how we can persuade the Trump administration to adopt that view. So question number one, goal. So Trump has said, and both Eran and Danny mentioned that the goal is to reduce the nuclear capability of Iran, to prevent Iran not only from having it or having remnants of it, but also prevent it from rebuilding it in the future, assuming that the regime stays in place. Another issue is, it was mentioned earlier, another issue is regime change. I don't think that Trump couldn't care less about regime change because of his global look at authoritarian regimes or governments. He has been interested consistently with dismantling Iranian's nuclear weapons program. And whether or not the regime would have to go as a result of it he was indifferent to that issue. Now, it seems to me that if you want to destroy completely the nuclear weapons program, it has to be done in a way that would leave nothing for Iran to keep or to rebuild. And the main challenge is still the Fordow facility, because Israel does not have the equipment, the bombs that could effectively destroy this place. We have been told that Israel still have some measures. If the United States were not to participate militarily along Israel, then Israel would still have some capability to damage Fordow, but it would not be able to destroy it as the United States could with those big bombs, 14-ton bomb that could penetrate 90 meters and completely destroy the facility. The only United States has the bomb. Only the United States has the plane to carry that bomb, the B-2. And I believe that 2 bombs like that could really destroy Fordow. And the destruction of Fordow is absolutely needed to make sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons capability or would be able to build it in the future. The challenges for that are several. And I believe that Trump advisors are discussing that. Question number 1 is how an American military intervention would affect Iran's retaliation options. Khamenei said the other day that if the United States were to attack Iran, then Iran would close the Straits of Hormuz or would use force against American bases in the Middle East, American manpower. The United States has 40,000 soldiers in the area. And how would that affect American pro-American Arab Sunni states, Emirates, Saudi Arabia? There is some fear in those states that American direct military intervention would cause Iran to attack them. And there is the issue of domestic politics that we have mentioned briefly. There are all kinds of public opinion polls distributed in the last 2 days. There was one poll conducted among Trump's constituency. The poll said that 2/3 support an American active military participation in the war. But Washington Post published a poll, I think it was published today, says only 20% of the American public supports that type of intervention. And there is some split among Trump's people. The split is both ideologically and professionally, because ideologically, make America great again or America first have criticized Trump for even helping the defense of Israel. They say the United States has nothing to earn from any participation, and they think that the U.S. should drop Israel under the bus. And Trump has stated yesterday that he invented America first. And he invented Make America Great Again. He would not allow anybody to define what this war would mean for America first. He said if the purpose of the war is to prevent Iran from becoming nuclear power, then it is compatible with the interests of America first and make America great again. But there is still the professional opposition to Trump. This comes from people who are pointing out to some of the dangers of a prolonged American military intervention. It would remind people of the failed military intervention starting from Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq. And some are saying that if American soldiers are going to be killed and sent to the United States in coffins, this would badly affect Trump's positions inside the United States, inside the United States political system. It would disappoint his supporters. And so they say that the United States should not actively militarily participate in the war. There is one thing that I would like to mention and is not sufficiently mentioned. Iran has been a significant component in what we call the axis of evil. This axis includes Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And Iran has been actively participating in activities of that axis. For example, it supplied drones and weapons to Russia in the war with Ukraine. So if Iran is taken out from this axis of evil, this would mean a major American victory at the global level. And therefore, this is something the United States should be interested in, because the United States' main rival in international affairs is China. And China is part of that axis. And China, to my surprise, have not done much to defend Iran. It gets much of its oil from Iran. And this brings me to maybe a final comment about one of the other constraints of making a positive decision, of making a decision in favor of military intervention, and that is the economic dimension. There is some concern that if the United States were to militarily actively intervene, then Iran would respond, would have no other choice but to respond, and this could damage oil facilities in the Middle East. This could increase the price of oil, and this is the last thing Trump would like to see in the United States. The price of gas at the pump is always a major economic and financial consideration for America, and also this could add to a very shaky global economy, which is not in a very good position right now. So I have raised a few factors in favor of intervention and a few factors against intervention. Some people say that Trump decides depending on the side he wakes up in the morning, and I think it might be true to the extent that he really makes decision based on intuition. He hears what all kinds of people say, he is processing it, and then he concludes and decides what to do. I think given his personality and his search for winning causes and winning states, it might be well for him to think that that he might just join the phenomenal success of Israel, and then in a few months he could claim, I really dismantled Iran's nuclear weapons program. Thank you.
Well, that would be justified if he's going to attack the Fordo facility, then he can use the me or the I. At least as part of it. Let's go to Bob.
Yes, thank you, Yossi, and I'm really pleased to join my colleagues here. I'm going to put up a slide. I don't think we need a lot of slides, but I'm going to broaden out a little bit rather than speculate about what Trump might do, as Eytan said, when he wakes up in the morning. I'm going to look at what we here, those of us in Israel and those in the pro-Israel community around the world, might be able to do at this moment uh, to provide a better U.S.-Israel relationship that would support a Trump action and other things. And in the process of discussing three items, I'll make some observations about this current situation. But from the point of view of action items, long-term ones, I somewhat satirically call this three easy pieces because, of course, none of them are easy. Some of you young at heart people may recall the great film by oh gosh, what was his? It was called Five Easy Pieces. So it was about piano pieces, but what's Jackson or some
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson.
Altman.
Jack Nicholson. He played a pianist at that point. It was his one of his breakout movies. Anyway, these are three easy pieces satirically, because of course it's not their thoughts, my thoughts during wartime. One of them is really for the pro-Israel community outside Israel, and the other two are for Israel. And let's start with what the people on the outside can do, because look, Trump is affected by public opinion in the U.S., obviously, and there is a large and alarmingly growing community in the U.S. that's actually supporting Iran at this moment. Yesterday, there was a large demonstration in New York City in support of Iran. And so those in the American Jewish community, in the American evangelical community, other supporters around the world need to be active here in pushing back against the haters. And it's that time. It's an action moment. It's not a sort of analytical moment. And identify some things here, because there's always room for analysis, because the anti-Zionist movement exists both on the right and on the left. But honestly, there's a center of gravity for this movement in the US, and it's not easy to talk about, but the center for gravity of this movement is elements of the American Muslim community. And that needs to be combated in the media, in Congress, in the courts, and in protests. The last time the American Jewish community did anything publicly was in the month right after the war started in October. In early November of 2023, there was supposedly the largest American Jewish gathering in history, over 100,000 people on the Mall. Well, that was a year and a half ago. Where is the follow-on protest movement in the U.S.? In support of Israel when it's fighting Iran? There should be. And that would get a positive media. That would be noticed by Trump. Particularly if the U.S. Jewish community is able to do what the Muslim community is able to do, which is to reach out intersectionally and bring in their allies. The American Muslim community is much smaller than the American Jewish community at this moment, half the size, and a lot less powerful politically, and a lot less well established economically. And yet, the energy is on their side. They're the ones able to, find allies among other groups and magnify the power of their argument. All the power to them. Where's the American Jewish community here on this? Let's talk about Zohran Mamdani. He's a case in point for what we're talking about. People know who this is. He is one of two leading candidates to be mayor of New York City. He's in his late 20s. As a college student at Bowdoin, I forget how you pronounce that liberal arts college in Maine, Bowdoin, he was one of the organizers of the Students for Justice in Palestine. Okay, this is the future here. People are migrating from campus protest movements to national politics, and it's happening this week. It's not a future trend, it's in a now trend. Mr. Mamandi is from the single largest ethnic segment of the American Muslim community. It's not Arabs. The single largest and by far the most powerful ethnic segment of that community are South Asians. His dad is an Indian Muslim. His mom is an Indian Hindu who's a famous filmmaker who is from the, this whole group of people who started as Brahmins, high caste Brahmins who migrated to the United States and reinvented themselves as oppressed people of color. Well, he's from that community. So they're very clever at rebranding themselves, and he's certainly out there. He is a hater. He is not just a leader of the campus protests, but if he ever gets a position like mayor of New York City, that's a very bad sign for whether or not a future president does things on behalf of Israel, because they see things like this. And he's right now gaining in the polls. He's number 2 in the race, but he's gaining on the number 1. Supposedly, public opinion polls say that roughly 20% of the American Jewish community in New York City support him. That's an astounding figure. We can talk about others. Many in the American Muslim community say this guy Mahmoud Halil, who is an immigrant from Syria, a Palestinian background, holding an Algerian passport, who was a student at Columbia and was a leader of the student protests there, and very much a litmus test case, according to his supporters. And we should embrace that, because he needs to be deported. And he's committed crimes in the U.S. As a student. So I don't want to go on and on about individuals, but there is a lot to do in the international community, starting with the immediate task of organizing intersectionally, fighting back in the courts, and frankly, refreshing the communal leadership of the American Jewish community, which really has not risen to this occasion. This is an action moment. I'm not one of the people who believe that community is disappearing anytime soon. That's been predicted 50 years ago in a famous Life magazine cover, the end of the American Jewish community. No, but as a relevant political actor in the US, it may be disappearing. People will still consider themselves Jewish in the same way that they consider themselves Nordic Americans, Swedish Americans, ethnic pride and all that. But in terms as a political force in the country, it needs to refresh. So that's one. The second, and again, these are trends that are long-term, but they also affect current policy. The second is for Israel. Let's recall what's happened here. Many people have said that only the U.S. can, from the air, take out this Fordo. Well, why is that? Why, the bomb that people talk about, the massive ordnance penetrator, was developed in the 1980s. It's not a new technology item. The fact is, Israel doesn't have heavy bombers. And the reason is the United States has denied that to them over the years. When Danny was ambassador, that probably came up there. It certainly came up after he left. And during the Obama period, I was in the US government at the time. There was serious concern that Israel would do what has just happened, strike Iran. And so the strategy to avoid that was the bear hug. You wrap your arms around Israel and prevent it from having the room for maneuver. You give them aid. There was the 10-year MOU that comes due, by the way, next year, 2026. It was done at the end of the Obama administration in 2016. So you give $3.2 billion a year of aid, but it comes with strings. Israel doesn't always get what it wants in terms of US procurement. And it certainly has not been given, and it has asked a few times for strategic bomber capacity. If it had that, it wouldn't need the US to bomb Fordow. And Israel should be able to develop its own bombs to do that. Again, the technology is 1980s. It's not modern stuff. It's just a huge bomb, a huge smart bomb. So Israel needs to take the opportunity now to show that it can be independent financially from the U.S. Now, it needs to maintain, as we talk here, the qualitative military edge. It needs access, exclusive access to certain types of technologies. We need to make sure that Turkey doesn't get the F-35 program, which is trying now to reviving its requests to do that. So it needs to maintain access to technology and technological, but over time, gradually, maybe not all at once, it needs to wean itself off of the U.S. military aid. And to do that, it needs to have a national security strategy that identifies for itself, for instance, what would be the weapons systems. I'm not qualified to answer that, but I think there's a process that should be underway where qualified experts in Israel do that, and it hasn't started. Finally, the effective way to do this is to grow the economy, because the 3.2 billion, or now if it's more than that, it's 3.6 billion. If you add in extras that have come through Iron Dome supplemental funding, that's not a big percentage of Israel's economy. Let's be clear. Israel has a $520 billion economy. So it's not even 1% of Israel's annual gross domestic product, what it gets from the US. Now, it's significant in terms of the military budget, but it can and should be replaced over time easily if Israel does the right things on structural reforms of its own economy. It can have a more healthy relationship with the U.S. Finally, we could talk more about that, but that is what the people who oppose the U.S. going into Iran right now want to see. They don't want a dependent Israel. Israel doesn't want to be dependent. So it creates a healthier environment. Finally, for Israel, third point, and we all know this, that there's this thing in Israel called conceptio. What are conceptio? Well, it's a Russian word that made its way into Hebrew. It doesn't really mean conception or preconception. It sounds like it does, but the way it's used, it's closer to the word groupthink. It's a comfortable set of assumptions that everyone in an inner circle adopts. And Israel is a small country with a small elite that has a tendency to do this. And it has certainly been evident, once again, in the feelings about Trump. Because when Trump first came in, everyone in Israel was breathing a big sigh of relief. Oh, finally, now we can, and by the way, it was partially true. The weapons that were denied during the Biden administration were back on the agenda. And the slowdowns and the public warnings about not going into Rafah and all these things were gone. But, he has not been the Messiah here when it comes to supporting whatever Israel wants. It's been quite clear. And if you believe, in sort of groupthink, then you miss the trends. And one of the trends that Israel's did miss, now belatedly have woken up to it, was that there is a strong group within MAGA that is not pro-Israel, quite the contrary. I noticed it. I'll tell you why. It's because, and I told people, including in JISS, hey guys, don't feel so comfortable here. The reason is within MAGA, you have people like Rand Paul. Now, Rand Paul is just one senator, one of 100 senators. However, he's very influential. His former communications director, Sergio Gore, there's a whole interesting profile of him in Tablet magazine I can recommend to people, has one of the most powerful positions in Washington. He's the director of White House personnel. It's his office that vets and really pushes candidates forward, to take over all the 4,000 different positions, that are given the federal government by the new administration, whatever administration. He's a super powerful guy, and he's a former aide to Rand Paul. Rand Paul just tweeted out a message yesterday saying, no U.S. involvement in Iran. So I'm not saying that he's a decisive factor, but if you're going to suddenly all agree that Trump is the godsend here, you're going to miss nuances, and you're going to miss the ability to capture updated trends. So the fact is, never get comfortable in assumptions. Sometimes assumptions start out being right and turn out, over time to be wrong. So if you stay with the assumptions, you're going to be in trouble. And when it comes to the U.S.-Israel relationship, you have to constantly update and be knowledgeable about the U.S. I think the best way to do that is to send more Israelis as shlichim, not just to the American Jewish community, send them to the evangelical movement, send them to the Indian community, which can be and often is very pro-Israel and is growing in importance too. So, have an enlightened policy that goes well beyond the American Jewish community in understanding the way the U.S. works. So those are my 3 points. And
thank you very much, Bob.
thank you.
Eyes opener. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jonathan, you are going to be last. And you have 7 minutes.
7 minutes, Bob, or 7 minutes?
7 minutes. We have a few questions
sorry.
already waiting for you, so
It's all good.
do it fast.
All right. Well, I think if I can take a little bit from each one of what everybody said, I think that it provides a quite clear overview of the various intricacies and considerations that are brought into the calculus of President Donald Trump when it comes to whether or not to bomb the Islamic Republic of Iran, to what extent to do that, what are the risk assessments attached to that, and what are the considerations both on the domestic all the way to the grand strategy, strategic power competition, and such. I will start briefly on the domestic. Indeed, Rand Paul and other senators with a certain influence, I wouldn't say that they're the most influential actors within the current administration, but they are nonetheless very influential. Indeed, also Rand Paul with Sergio, his former aide, is a very important point that Paul mentioned, since he managed to oust many of the people who were very supportive of Israel from the administration, including from the National Security Council, people like the former NSC senior director for the MENA region or Near Eastern region, Eric Traeger, excuse me, who was, of course, very clear-eyed, and I think he was very much America first on the one hand, but also very clear-eyed on reality throughout the Middle East and the value that the state of Israel presents to the United States from a strategic perspective. Other actors also, or individuals within that context that were ousted, were predominantly from that group, the Mike Waltz group, and therefore there is a lot of damage that occurred from that perspective. But nevertheless, when it came to President Trump, it seems like, in contrast to much of the chatter that we heard over the course of many years now, since his first presidency, President Trump is very consistent. So if he says something, he likes to stick to it. He likes to make a buzz around it, to make other voices contemplate and consider various courses of action surrounding that. But ultimately, he remains very true to the first notion that he threw into the mix, and specifically also when it comes to Iran's nuclear infrastructure and the Islamic Republic's aspirations to attain nuclear weapon capabilities. He never wavered from the position that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And he stayed very consistent in that along the way. Now, I'll keep it very close to where we're at right now, because I think that one of the main buzzes that was about trying to convince President Trump not to participate in any type of intervention with regard to the Islamic Republic has to do with the influencers that have a lot of impact on his base, namely America First and the MAGA movement, people like Tucker Carlson and others who were very vocal in their objection, and not only in their objection, but at some point even Tucker Carlson went out of his way to call on President Trump to drop Israel altogether, as he put it, something that, of course, infuriated Trump, since Trump doesn't like people to tell him what to do, which is an understatement, and therefore there was a seeming breakaway that involved also other people from this movement, to include the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and others who were very consistent in their restrainist, as Dr. Mike Duran coined the phrase, with regard to the isolationists who seek to be non-interventionist in essence. It seems like there was a certain consistency in efforts to dissuade President Trump from intervening in an issue of this significance to America's international standing. Now, it seems like it got to the point where President Trump started saying, as was mentioned earlier, also, I think it was by Eran, about Tulsi Gabbard being not relevant at some point when she made the reference to,
Yeah.
excuse me?
Danny mentioned it, but it's okay.
Danny mentioned it. Also good. The So here specifically, also when Tulsi Gabbard basically kept on the line of Iran was not necessarily pursuing a nuclear weapon, as she also briefed in the latest hearing on this year's risk assessment of the intelligence community, that this line of or this position, even though it was very much based on intelligence collection during the Biden administration rather than today, was a foundation to what much of the rhetoric that sought to promote anti-interventionism or anti-involvement in the whole campaign against the Islamic Republic, and specifically on preventing Iran from attaining nuclear weapon capabilities. Now, that has been resolved since President Trump basically put his foot down and said, if you have an issue with that, I won't repeat everything Dunny said, so I'll step into the fact that J.D. Vance, the vice president, actually posted a response to the whole ordeal, and he highlighted that President Trump has been very consistent in his actions and called on all MAGA and America First to align themselves with President Trump on this issue. So it seems like there was an effort to mend the fences, so to speak, and to draw the isolationists back into the ship, to the point where Tucker Carlson, for instance, called President Trump and asked for forgiveness, alongside other people. Tulsi Gabbard also had to make a public statement and realigning herself with the president after trying to influence him in other directions. So it seems like everybody is right now behind the president, and the president is currently in a position where he is explaining to the American public that right now this is the best course of action for America, right? So this is part of the responsibility of the president to do that, and he is actively engaged in this. Now, a couple of layers that we need to take into account. First and foremost, from a geostrategic level, strategic power competition has been raging since the 27th of March of 21, since State Councilor Wang Yi at the time of China told his American counterpart, Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, we are peer nations and let the strategic power competition begin, so to speak. Since then, the United States is required, doesn't always do so, but it is required to look at every single issue from the prism of strategic power competition. I believe that here in this context is also something that America is doing quite vigilantly, and is doing so in a manner that also considers the consequences of the various contingencies that may arise were it to attack Iran, and to what scope, whether or not it's going to just focus on Iran's nuclear infrastructure or to broaden its scope also to other type of munitions in the event that Iran does respond against various US bases and assets in the region, and what is basically the sequence of events that could spiral potentially out of control, and how is it going to impact the position of the United States on the global stage, first and foremost vis-a-vis this, the Communist Party of China, namely China, and the situation in the Pacific, Russia, of course, Iran being a major supplier of the Shahed 136 to Russia in the war of aggression in Ukraine. How is that basically going to impact that relationship, and not only of unmanned aerial vehicles, but also surface to surface capabilities? And beyond that, don't forget that the Islamic Republic is very much active in Africa, from Sudan, where they're in support of Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, all the way to Somalia, where Al-Shabaab is receiving major support from the Iranians. We, of course, in Israel are impacted by the Houthis, Ansar Allah, dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen. How is this going to change the equations? All those different issues, all the way to Niger and other locations where the Iranians are involved, are going to be impacted by the consequences of what is going to happen in the next 72 to 124 hours of this decision window that President Trump may pursue. Now, if we take one layer down, we also need to take into account a couple of issues from a regional perspective. The first and foremost is the fact that Israel and Turkey, two US allies, are the only actors in the region currently that have the capacity to project power beyond their borders. This, of course, may cause friction or a certain rivalry on the northern front of Israel, southern front of Turkey, in all that we have to, in the friction points, basically in Syria, Lebanon, and potentially even Iraq, Jordan. But we need to see how this evolves, because the Turks are very concerned that a weak Iran or a shift in Iranian power projection, supposedly not in the classic term of projection, but rather about their capacity to project power beyond their borders, is going to somehow influence their stature in the region. And that is something that the Turks have been conveying quite vigorously to their counterparts in Washington. And there is also that consideration in Washington about the relations between their two main allies in the region and how they're going to mitigate risk. Last but not least, if I may, Yossi?
Last.
Last. Okay. So the last point I think that needs to be taken into account is when we're looking at the whether or not Israel can do it alone or the United States does it. I think it has to do with a matter of risk. Israel can do everything, but the risk attached to its activities are significantly more robust than if the United States does it. A lot shorter, a lot more focused, and America needs a good scenario of messaging to its rivals, both China, Russia, North Korea, and everybody else, that it is maintaining the upper hand. So it's a matter of messaging also. If Israel engages the Fordo attempt to destroy it and fails, how is it going to reflect on the United States? So that is also a calculus that the Americans have. With all that being said and done, from what I hear from Washington, including people very close to Trump, that he is all but considered to engage in this context, in contrast to a lot of chatter that has been sounded in recent hours.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Okay.
I think, first of all, we exhausted the time we had, but I think that everybody of you gave an excellent exposition of the complexity of the situation. It's not easy. One of the things that I'm coming out thinking to myself after hearing and listening to all of you is, what is better for Israel? Is it so clear that the better option for Israel is that President Trump will decide to intervene? I'm afraid that because we have not, unlike what Bob suggested, we have not prepared a bomb like GBU-57 of our own, And if we really want to see the nuclear project of Iran coming to an end, then we probably need the intervention of the United States in taking care of this facility. Doesn't come without a price, because President Trump is going to pay a price for that inside the United States, and we are going to pay a price because it means that we are not able to do everything by our own. And as you said, once he does it, he's going to say, I think it was Danny was speaking about the exit strategy. Once he does it, he's going to say, oh, bye-bye, I'm leaving. And we are going to be left with the need to maintain the Iranian away from having the capability of producing nuclear weapons, assuming that the regime is not going to change. And that's all makes it very complicated situation. We had some questions, but main line of the questions was less about the issues we were talking about, but more about what you said, Bob, about the way things are going inside the United States. So there's a lot of questions about what is the real center of gravity. And some people say that the center of gravity is the money that Qatar and others are paying and spending in the United States that turns the wheels against us. Okay, that's definitely something that has to be mentioned when we speak about the United States.
Well,
I think,
if I could, I mean, I was only talking about the center of gravity for the minority of the U.S. that are these strong anti-Zionists. Yes, there's money flowing into the U.S. from all kinds of places. Qatar is a big one. I mean, among the other concerns, again, there was the people marching on behalf of Iran in the streets of Manhattan. It's pretty clear to me, at least, that the center of gravity for that is Muslim American organizers who use intersectionality to bring in other groups very successfully. I mean, I admire their work, frankly. They're energetic and they're underdogs and they're doing a good job for their community. I wish the American Jews had such people. But the other thing to mention that we haven't is the overall sentiment in the US that people like Rand Paul and others are referring to that needs to be addressed and defeated is this idea that somehow an attack on Fordow is the equivalent of the US invading Iraq. If anyone had seen the Tucker Carlson interview with Senator Ted Cruz, and not just the snippets, but the entire interview I thought was interesting. It's very clear that Ted Cruz is drawing, Tucker Carlson, who, has become over the years bitterly anti-Israel, is drawing on the sentiment that we got tricked. We, the American public, got tricked into going into Iraq. We were told about weapons of mass destruction. That turned out not to be true, and it was too late. We had already intervened. And now let's not do that again. And let's ask right now the hard questions of the people promoting regime change in Iran, and that includes Senator Ted Cruz. And of course, Tucker Carlson challenges what Prime Minister Netanyahu says, that Iran was behind 2 assassination attempts against President Trump. Well, there's no evidence for at least one of those. This young boy in Butler, Pennsylvania, who tried to assassinate Trump, there's no evidence of any connection to Iran. So he's doing those kind of challenges, but behind it, Americans understand that whether or not they like Tucker Carlson, he's doing what they felt should have been done 20 years ago before the Iraq invasion, which is challenging the claims. So first of all, people need to say, this is not Iraq. This is not the same thing as invading and occupying Iraq. And secondly, they need to be very careful about factual claims. And this goes to my third to-do item, which is, don't rest on easy assumptions, either for yourself or for others. Challenge assumptions. Do we really know that Iran has done a lot of bad things in the US? But do we really know that it is currently funding an attempt to assassinate President Trump? I don't know that. And that's what Tucker Carlson was asking Ted Cruz. And I thought he was successful in challenging Cruz on that. So lesson learned.
I'd say, as a concluding remark, I would say that I think it's healthy and the right thing to have this debate in the United States.
Yeah.
All these points that we have raised about pros and cons for American decision to take Fordo are should be heard. So nobody can say in the end that the decision was taken without listening to all these points. The decision should be taken after taking into account all the aspects. It's a complicated situation. Nobody thinks it's an easy decision. It's a very complicated decision for anybody. I remember President Obama with the red line and the way he decided to not go and do what needs to be done after the red line has been crossed. And
with our help, by the way.
Sorry?
With our help.
Yes, we helped everybody know that the red line was crossed.
Yeah.
And there was a price to pay for that. There was a price to pay for not crossing for not doing what was promised to be done. And at least here, I don't think that the president has committed himself to anything. He's committed himself to one thing, that Iran would not have nuclear weapons. That is his commitment. At the same time, when you threaten to do something, if you don't do it, then you end up chicken. And that's something in some place that the president doesn't want to see himself. So he's now playing the two options. It's both threatening, hoping that the Iranians will cave in and capitulate. And if not, in my mind, he's going to take action. If the Iranians are not going to capitulate, he's going to take action. Because if it doesn't, it means that Iran would eventually have the Fordo facility, which was built first and foremost in order to enable the Iranians to enrich uranium to a military grade in a well-protected place that Israel cannot reach, and maybe the United States cannot reach. And that was the logic behind Fordo. If you leave them with that at this point of time, then you actually acquiesce the existence of the capability to produce nuclear weapons by Iran. It's true that Israel has already managed to cause a very severe damage to the program. Parts of it is going to be very difficult for the Iranians to fix, but major parts of it they can fix. And with a little help from the Chinese or a little help from the Russians, they can fix the rest of it. Fordo, once you destroy it, you don't build another Fordo, I believe. And then the message, it's more than just the damage, it's the message. We are not going to let you do that, and if necessary, we should use force for that. And to that, nobody has an answer. So I leave President Trump with the dilemma, and I hope he listened and he takes all the points, very good points that everybody made here. I think it was an excellent webinar in my mind, and I hope everybody enjoyed, and thank you very much, and we are almost on time.
Yossi,
so thank you very much.
Can I have just 1 minute
Yes,
about some anecdotal background about Tucker Carlson? You know, when I was in Washington, he was a correspondent in the Washington Times. And I saw him many times. He came to my house many times. He was a real fan of Israel. He was a real fan of the neocons during the second Bush. And something happened to him that he turned all the way, you know, like 180 degrees. And some people told me, you know, remember his very flattering interview in Moscow with Putin that he was granted by Putin. So some people told me, you know, just, and again, I'm not referring to anything, just to follow the money.
Could be. Let's not say things that we don't know whether they are correct or not. Anyhow, thank you very much, Danny. Thank you very much, Eytan. Thank you very much, Eran, Bob, and Jonathan. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.